Hi everyone, Sandman here. This video is brought to you by a bonus donation from everyone's favorite Jolly Fat Cat. So with no particular topic, I want to cover the rise of androgyny in our society. After going to a club for the first time in probably at least 5 to 10 years in 2016, I was horrified by the number of skinny feminized men and overweight masculinized women. It was like being in some sort of crazy dystopian film from the 1970s, possibly like THX 1138. In that film, everyone is bald and wearing the same white jumpsuit and medicated, so they're all perfectly happy. That's where we're heading with this insanity that women and feminists are pushing for. Third wave feminism was all about promoting this idea that mentally there are no differences between men and women. But most of my students during my gender studies courses in university continue to remain masculine if they were men, or remain feminine if they were women. The professors, on the other hand, were the only ones that actually changed their outward appearance by taping down their breasts and dressing like the Saturday Night Live character Pat. Now, however, it looks like their cultural Marxist disease has seeped into the rest of society. Many women around here are basically trying to look masculine while remaining to look feminine at the same time, especially the women in the tattoo culture. That way they can keep their female bodies, but they cover themselves in masculine-looking tattoos. That way they can attract feminine women because they have the masculine tattoo look, and men as well because they also have the curves and shape of a traditional female body. But as for feminine men, the first link in the description is called Selfridges Goes Gender Neutral, Rise of Androgynous Clothing. It's a slightly older article from 2015, and it's about a high-end department store called Selfridges, and it's about their launch of a clothing line called Agender. In March of that year, the store took their retail flagship store in England and got rid of the men's and women's departments and made everything unisex. All of the mannequins became gender-neutral specific, so you can imagine yourself as a new androgynous you. In Japan, we've also seen the rise of the androgynous-looking male for the last 10 years. It's as if everywhere I look, men are shedding their muscles for mullets and showing off their hairless legs, while women are wearing full pants to cover their hairy legs. This, I believe, is not simply about fashion, but is also about using fashion as a movement in visually conveying to people where the power increasingly rests in our society. We've been here before in the late 1960s and 70s with the likes of David Bowie and the glam rockers back in the day. And it's no coincidence because I believe at that time women were riding high off the second wave of feminism. So it made sense that there was a lot of visual gender bending going on. In the 1990s, women also wore what used to be referred to as boyfriend jeans. Kanye West and David Beckham today, however, are redefining the newly emasculated man by wearing skirts. The real question we should be asking is this just a fad like we saw in decades before, or is it here to stay? In previous decades, men wore feminized clothing, but they still exuded male confidence, and their bodies still appeared muscular in most cases. Women were also still skinny, and you could still see their female form peeking under their Canadian tuxedos. The second link in the description is to an article called, "Is Agender Fashion a Trend or a Movement?" And it tries to discuss if this is just a trend or it's basically here to stay. A couple of days ago, I was wandering through the mall and saw what appeared to be two tall trans women, but parts of their outfits appeared masculine, while other parts appeared feminine. It was like they were begging for someone to walk over to them, put their hands down their overall openings, and feel around for a pair of smoothly shaven, gold-painted balls. They weren't trying to look masculine, and they weren't trying to look feminine. I think they were somewhere in between. And I believe this article is right when it explores the issue of trans identity. It's not simply about the look of clothing, hair, and makeup, like it was in previous generations, but also body modification and gender bending. How long is it now before the majority of women out there are hairy and covered in tattoos, and some choosing to be overweight while men are hairless, skinny, and have feminine-looking hair and clean, unmarked skin? The feminine appearance exudes sexual powers in our society, while a masculine one shows another person that you actually have resources. There are more women employed than men these days, and they're basically taking over the top government jobs and slowly working their way to taking over the corporate gigs as well. So it makes sense that as women gain more economic power in society, they will dress in more powerful masculine ways. While men at the same time, while they lose economic power, will increasingly sexualize themselves in feminine ways in an attempt to appeal to the masculine women that are out there. Opposites attract, so I don't actually hold it against these men for trying to be a trophy beta male husband for some woman in the future. But what these poor wimpy manlets don't seem to understand is they aren't going to be attracted to them in the long term because of hypergamy. Sure, women in their teens and 20s might go after an androgynous girly man, but as women get older, the hypergamy starts to kick in. Women are attracted to the top 10% of men, but there aren't enough of those to go around. So I'm guessing that more men are choosing to feminize themselves for for other reasons. I'm seeing a steady rise of trans women in relationships with other trans women. The choice for many typical young men is either the fudge pack and androgynous guy, or male to female tranny, or the other option is to go TFL, true forced loneliness. For most guys it sounds gross, but on a weekly basis I'm getting messages from guys here on my YouTube channel telling me that they've actually replaced women in their lives with trannies, and they aren't looking back, and they call themselves MGTOW. In the future, I'm predicting that the greatest competition women might have for the highest quality males might not actually be coming from other women, but it might be coming from other men that are turning themselves into 80 or 90% female, while keeping their man junk intact. This is probably the reason why transgendered porn is quickly rising in popularity all across the internet. If women are increasingly looking masculine, it's eventually going to get to the point where feminized men look better than masculinized looking women. It becomes a toss-up between a 300-pound woman with a crew cut with cooch critters or a 130-pound dude with breast implants. Or you have the third option, which is basically to go your own way, which I'm guessing more and more traditionally masculine males are going to basically be doing and taking that particular choice. The next choice men would actually have is probably the trans woman. That's why I think that feminists are against trans women and say that male to female trans women are not actually real women. But ironically, if you criticize a female to male trans man, you'd be surprised how quickly you get attacked for not being tolerant of gender diversity. And they will argue with you until they're basically blue in the face that a trans man is just as male as a real man. But trans women can't argue back the same way. A few years back, the world saw its first trans or androgynous supermodel from Bosnia, and his male was Andre. Now Andre, or Andrea with the full sex change, has decided to move to more tolerant Australia, to avoid the violence in Eastern Europe, no doubt. The rise of transgendered bathrooms and 3-year-olds looking for sex changes is not just about catering to a small minority of people out there. It's about socially conditioning all of society, because in the 60s and 70s, men might have actually dressed in androgynous ways, but they didn't lob off their twig and berries like a skin tag. It's almost as if the culture and social media is trying to convince men to give up their manhood by getting fully or at least partially neutered. Women are cheering for men to transition to women, but what I predict will eventually happen is that men will be better at acting and looking like women, and as a result, feminists will get even less attention from men than they currently get. More women will be on artificial antidepressants rather than the real ones. Now you're probably going to ask me, but Sandman, what the hell are you talking about? Women taking natural antidepressants. And if you were listening to one of my recent talks, I was discussing how sperm has natural antidepressant qualities. Women that have sex without condoms tend to get addicted to their partner's Peg D and their Slot C, because of the special sriracha sauce in his manly blue balls. Women riding the cock carousel are probably just trying to save money by not actually having to buy antidepressants. It's like the man already has a pharmacy in his pants. Unfortunately, it's the man that has to pay the dispensing fee with his blood, sweat, and tears. The third article I'm putting in the description is called Why Women Are Frustrated and Confused About Men and Dating. And I discussed the idea of the male gatherer, and here's a short sentence, and I quote, "The male gatherer is into low-stress relationships. In the event he should decide the woman doesn't meet his needs after all, he has no problem leaving. His reasons, ? She was too much trouble. Who needs drama, ? Meanwhile, he takes pleasure in having sex on a regular basis. Gratification with no commitment and no repercussions. That's his motto. Yet sadly, women offer themselves up to this so-called male feminist who's actually a gatherer in disguise. The reality is that the male gatherer has lost his instinct for honest romance and true commitment. He's not a gentle, caring, fair-minded man that he claims to be. Courting women isn't part of his gatherer's paradigm. He believes the relationship should be easy and uncomplicated." Unquote. As you can see, this article doesn't have much to do with a man's appearance, only his ability to adapt to a feminine world. My first long-term relationship of almost 5 years, I left once she started getting selfish and stressing me out. I also never married because I could see the financial drawbacks that they would basically cause to me. My 10-year relationship was the same thing. I never married her but lived with her and kept my financial life separate and didn't want to provide and protect because I instinctively saw it wasn't worth it in the long term because she held too much power. The reason I'm discussing this is because in a way, modern society feminized my mind and I started looking at what I could get from relationships and not at what I could give them. Even when I actually gave my partners things, they would get pissed off at me because they felt better giving to me instead. I feel now that their minds had basically been masculinized. One girl grew up in a masculinized culture in the country. The other grew up raised by an openly feminist mother that believed in making her children dress in androgynous ways and act like a boy. I was also raised by a strong mother figure, so I had no issues accepting things from women in my life. The article also talks about guys that act like hippies and believe in free love. and I was very hippie-like in my early 20s because I explored all kinds of weird countercultures and ways of doing things that weren't traditional. I would say that I was very left-leaning. I guess I was taught to be a pretty boy and find a woman that could take charge and you what you wanted, and that basically made sense to me. But unfortunately I learned the hard way that it's women that are actually looking for a man like that and not the other way around. I guess growing up, those gender studies courses in university must have influenced me even though I actually thought they didn't while I was taking them. Most of this article that I'm talking about is a wall of text and verbal diarrhea. But women also tend to be confused with regards to a world that's full of feminized men, both mentally and physically. The last thing I want to say about dudes looking like ladies is that when a straight white male is androgynous and looks possibly gay, he can't be openly criticized as an impressive straight male. It's like camouflage. If people think you're gay, then they can't accuse you of being an oppressive member of the patriarchy. So to that extent, some men probably look androgynous as a sort of camouflage against social justice warriors. Anyways, that's all I've got to say for today. Thanks again, Fat Cat, for your donation, and I hope you get a nice daily dose of red pills, as well as your usual daily dose of man sauce to keep you from getting depressed. For all the ladies out there, please don't forget to smash the like button with your Sasquatch hands, and also check out the MGTOW mystery link. This one is for you. As for everyone else out there, please follow me on Twitter or like me on Facebook to get tomorrow's video today. Thanks for taking your daily dose of red pills. And remember, a red pill a day keeps Mrs. Doubtfire's tranny granddaughters away. So enjoy the rest of your day, and cheers.